Gedalia was a simple beggar. His father died when he was very young, and his mother and him would wander around from town to town, inquiring after the townspeople to provide them with anything, food, water, clothing, money, whatever they had. One time they found themselves in Mezebush, and the Baal Shem Tov caught eye of Gedalia and noticed something very special. So he went up to his mother, and he asked and said, "Please, if you'd allow me, I'd like to take care of your son Gedalia. He could stay with me, I'll teach him and provide for him, and for you as well. Food, clothing, housing, whatever you need, I'll give you." As reluctant as she was, she agreed, and the Baal Shem Tov took Gedalia under his roof and started teaching him everything. The Baal Shem Tov and his Chassidim taught Gedalia until he was of marriageable age, and by that time he became a real prodigy, a real Talmud Chacham, a wise individual. And people were wondering, who is the Baal Shem Tov going to choose for Gedalia to get married to? And so they were shocked when they saw that the Baal Shem Tov was sending his shamash, his servant, to some far-off village. The shamash went to this village and found a chassid there of the Baal Shem Tov. And he showed him a letter from the Baal Shem Tov saying, "Do you know this individual? His name is Zusha." He says, "No, I've never heard of him, but I'm so honored to have you here. Maybe we could throw a big party tomorrow and we could invite all the people and you can go around and ask them if they know this Zusha person." So he says that's a great idea, and they went through with it. The next day they had this party and everyone came and they're drinking and eating and singing. It was so fun. And the shamash was walking around asking if anyone knew this Zusha person. No one knew him except for one man. He says, "Look, I don't know what the Baal Shem Tov would want with the Zusha that I know, but I only know one Zusha in this area, and he does have daughters that are of marriageable age, but this Zusha is a simple onion peddler. He barely knows how to read, so it doesn't make much sense to me." But the shamash knew better than to question the motives of the Baal Shem Tov. And he says, "Where can I find him?" He said, "Well, you can find him tomorrow. He'll be in the marketplace selling his onions." He says, "Okay, great." So the next day, the shamash is walking around the market, and sure enough, he hears, "Onions, onions for sale, come get fresh onions." And the servant goes up to this man, the onions peddler, and says, "Excuse me, is your name Zusha?" "Yes, it is. How can I help you?" He says, "I have a letter for you." He hands him the letter. Zusha looks at him. He says, "I can't read. What do you want me to do with this?" He says, "Don't worry, I'll read it for you." He opens up the letter, and it's from the Heliker Baal Shem Tov, and says, "Dear Zusha, I'd like to request a shidduch, a match between your daughter and Gedalia, a boy that I've been teaching and grooming. And please, don't worry, I'll provide for everything, the whole wedding and all the dowry of the daughter, and I'll even set them off on good stead." One of the Chassidim says, "Wow, that's so nice. Someone as holy as the Baal Shem Tov, what a great deal." And Zusha looks at him and says, "Yeah, that's awesome. I'm not stupid. I'll take it." And the two of them sit down and write the whole document right then and there. A couple days later, the wedding takes place in Mezebush, and everyone's happy, everyone comes, all the Chassidim are there. And at the end of the wedding, one of the Chassidim goes up to the Baal Shem Tov and he says, "Rebbe, I don't understand. Gedalia could have married anyone. He's a Talmud Chacham, a prodigy. Why would you have him marry Reb Zusha's daughter when Reb Zusha is illiterate? He's a simple peddler, onion peddler." He says, "Let me tell you the story. A long time ago, there was a king who had an only son. And this son had a good friend that was a Jewish boy, and the two would sit and learn together all the time. And he really took to it, and he really wanted to convert. But he knew it was outlawed at the time, and he's the king's son. What was he thinking? So he devised a plan. He went to his father, and he said, "I'd like to go and study the ways of the world." His father said, "That's a great idea." He gave him money and sent him off. And this boy went to a far-off land where he knew of a certain tzaddik. And he started studying under him and learning until he became a prodigy in his own right. Eventually he converted. And this boy, who is now called Abram, lived under this tzaddik. Now it happened one day that a nobleman came through, and he was delivering a discourse, giving a speech in the area, and everyone showed up, including Abram. Abram is sitting there, and he noticed a little pendant on this man's coat that had the same insignia of his father's kingdom. And so he was tranced, stuck, looking at it. And this nobleman noticed. So after his speech, he called for the boy to come. Now Abram was fearful. In those times, it was outlawed to convert to Judaism, but chas v'shalom, God forbid he would ever conceal anything. So he went up, and the nobleman asked him, "Who are you?" Abram told him his whole story, from start to finish, the king's son, and how he's converted. The nobleman, just had a smile on his face. When he finished speaking, he says, "I'd like you to marry my daughter." He said, what do you mean? I just told you that I converted to Judaism. He says, yeah, well, I too am a Jew. I come from the Marrano Jews of Spain. And even though my daughter is not Jewish, I would love for her to marry you, and she would surely convert. So they went through with it, and this boy Avram married this nobleman's daughter. And shortly after the wedding, Avram went to his new wife, and he said, look, I need to tell you a secret. Every now and then, I do what is called a soul elevation, an aliyah neshama. And I go up to these high heavens, and it's very important that you don't break me out of it. You don't wake me from these trances, because God forbid something could happen. It's life or death. So she said, okay. She recognized he's a very special Jew. And this happened from time to time. But one time, it was very, very long. And she was very scared what was happening. But God forbid she'd wake him up. And when he eventually broke out of the trance, she asked him, what happened? What happened? He said, my dear, this time I went higher than I've ever been before. But when I got to this final gate in Gan Eden, they wouldn't let me through. So I asked them why not. They told me that it's because I wasn't born Jewish, that I didn't grow up from a Jewish mother. And so I said, well, that's not my fault. I can't do anything about that. And they responded that they understand that, but I can go back down and be reborn to a Jewish mother. So what do you think? She looked at him with tears in her eyes and she says, okay, if that's what you want, I'll allow it. But I only have one request, that I too be reborn to a Jewish mother, and then in the next life you and I end up together again. He said, okay. Sure enough, the two passed away shortly after that. And the Baal Shem Tov looked at his students and he says, how blessed are we that we merit to sit here at the wedding, the reunion of Avram and his Kala, his wife, with Gedalia and his wife in this life.